did it. We're here.
We made it to our own house. Yay! And right on time, too. Mended light. Folks, we have taken this show home. We are now filming these videos at nuestra casa.
Ooh, what does that mean?
You know what that means. Your Spanish is excellent. It's not Spanish for our home. Today we are going to be talking about communication or comunicación. Because if there are two ways to interpret something, you will zig and I will zag.
We're opposites that way. It's magical. And by magical, I mean...
It's a huge pain in the ass, and it's almost killed our marriage. Yay! So, let's...
Ow! Yeah, now we're talking! Yeah! Ow!
So we're going to start with Nate Bargatzi, who is one of our favorite comedians, talking about communication in marriage. Let's do this.
My wife will tell me that she always says that I don't like the way she talks. And it's not her voice. I like the sound of her voice. That'd be a big problem, I think, if it was like, it's your voice. I just hate it. Just to go to couples therapy and be like, can you hear it right? Like, it's not, it's not fun.
It's a dreamer thing to say. Your voice isn't...
It's the information that she chooses to tell me at times. We took a trip to Florida, to Fort Lauderdale. And her and our daughter are flying from Nashville, where we live. And I'm flying from Detroit. We're meeting at Fort Lauderdale's airport. I have to find them when they land. So I called her because I was about to take off. And I was like, all right, what time do you guys leave? She goes, noon. And it was 11:30 and they're still at home. I was like, Laura, I don't know if you even know what an airport is. But if that plane was in our driveway, I don't think you could make it. And she said, that's what time we leave for the airport. Our flight's not till 1:30. And I was like, all right. So what do you think I wanted to know when I asked that? Is that what you thought the best time you could give me was a time that means nothing to nobody?
Oh, I've got thoughts.
What time did you go to bed last night? Just tell me that, and I'll just look up all the planes that land in Florida, and I'll guess which one I think you're on. She said, I'm sorry I don't talk the way you want me to talk. I'm like, I want you to talk like a regular person, all right? Like you've been around people before, you know? We didn't talk in Florida, I'll tell you that.
Oh, what? Okay.
I hate it when it starts at the beginning of a trip. It's the worst.
Yeah, then you gotta like sort through things. Well, we always do because we don't like to have miserable trips, or at least we try to. Mm-hmm. And sometimes trying to goes bad. Mm-hmm. What? You're thinking of Australia? You're thinking of a different trip. Anyways, but the pictures were so good. Pictures of Australia were so good. Okay, the first time you played that for me, because of how he like sets it up and all the punchline and deliveries, I thought, yeah, the wife, Laura, she's being ridiculous and she's not communicating well. But you listen to it again, and you listen to the question that he asks, what time do you leave? And she says, we leave at noon. Now, what he meant was, what time does your flight take off? What time does your flight leave?
Yeah.
But he wasn't clear in the phrasing of that. And so she took it as, what time do you leave the house? Now, to him, it's like, I don't care what time you leave the house. But it still wasn't a clear communication, and round two, I side with Laura. I already can guess that you side with me.
How healer of you to see both sides of what's going on.
You noticed.
And both sides are equally valid, whereas a thinker would say...
It doesn't make any sense. Like,
yeah,
why would I ask you that question? Like, your answer doesn't make any sense.
Why would I want to know what time you leave the house? I don't care.
Why would you tell me something that means nothing to nobody?
So this is something that has come up in our relationship, but I'm sure it's come up in everybody's relationship.
Yeah. Well, and there's a phrase for it.
Yes, perception bias. Perception bias is you draw conclusions based on what you expect to see or experience, which includes communication, right? what your intent is, you just assume the other person's going to
Right.
receive it that way, understand it that way. Which he did when he said, "What time do you leave?" He wants to know what time the flight takes off. So he just assumes that's the question she's going to answer.
Right.
And this
Because when he's at the airport looking to see what gate that flight is coming in on, he's going to need the departure time.
Right.
Like, he knows what city they're leaving from, but then he's going to need the departure time, which makes perfect sense to someone who spends a lot of time flying on planes.
Yes.
Which I'm sure he does.
Well, and we can relate to this.
And his wife probably not as much.
Yeah, and so for her, it's just like, well, that question could go a lot of ways, and this is the first way that popped in my mind.
Yeah.
We relate to this because you are very methodical, and there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and there's like, this is what this question means. This is the only logical thing this question would mean.
Well, I'm always calibrated. Is that
Calibrating?
no?
I'm always calibrating.
No, to efficiency.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, my focus is always efficiency.
Correct.
My focus is logic. My focus is doing things as fast as they can be done in a quality way, right?
Sure.
Where that's not, I mean, that's how I interact with the world as a thinker closer.
So as a healer, I'm more calibrated to what's the way that is going to be the most connecting. And as a dreamer, I tend to be calibrated to what's most fun.
Yeah.
And if it's not connection or fun, then I might interpret something any number of ways. So here's what happens in our relationship. Both of us can communicate something that we think is clear that the other person takes a different way. What you do that I historically don't is you're more aware of that dynamic. Yeah. And so you check to make sure that what I heard is what you were trying to communicate. What I understood was, right?
A check for understanding.
Yeah.
Right. Because it took us a while to be aware of the fact.
Yeah.
That, like, tomato, apples, oranges, like, that it was, if there was two ways to take something, we would take it the exact opposite way.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Like, it doesn't make me right and you wrong, or you right and me wrong, which people can get caught in that of like, no, what I said made sense.
Right.
You know, and he plays up on
and
that.
And my way's the right way. And he definitely plays up on that for the comedy of it. But the issue was you would be constantly checking for understanding and that we're on the same page. Whereas I would be kind of just quick to assume that, okay, I got it. And it led to, I understood, this is what you said. And you would get frustrated with me and say you weren't listening. And I'd say, I was listening. This is what you said. Right? And what happened was, okay, if I was listening, I wasn't listening actively. I wasn't checking for understanding. I wasn't repeating back what I was hearing to make sure we were on the same page. Which ironically, I am really good at in therapy. But in therapy, I'm like tuned into this is what I'm doing now. And in my day-to-day relationships, I don't practice that skill as readily. I am working on it, and we are going to get there. But what this led to after years is, because for you, it's very, I mean, for everybody, but especially for you, being heard, being understood, this is how someone shows that they care.
Right.
This is how you feel loved and respected. Mm-hmm. And when I didn't take the time to check for understanding, or when I would only half listen and cherry pick like a few key phrases that I was hearing and then like piece together the rest in my brain, it led to you, well, I don't want to speak for you. I'm just repeating back what you've told me. How did it make you feel?
Yeah, well, I didn't see seen or heard or understood, and I didn't feel like you cared enough to even understand where I was coming from.
Yeah.
Do I even know you?
Which was hard because you started to say things to me after years of marriage that I don't see you, that I don't know you, and it feels to you like I don't care to. Which was really hard because to me that was not how I perceived myself, and that wasn't my desire, but it was how I was showing up. And at first I did what I think is human nature to do, and I'm not making an excuse, but like I pushed back and assumed that you were the problem, right? That it wasn't me. And the reason for that is because I had a good husband checklist in my brain. And the good husband checklist I built from watching my dad with my mom, who is very much like me. And the ways that
your mom is very much like you.
My mom is very much like me. And I watched how my dad showed up for her, and I'm like, this is what a good husband does. And I could list off some of those things, and the healers out there watching would be like, oh, that would be amazing if a man could do that for me. So I thought, I'm an amazing husband. I'm doing what my dad did. Not only that, I'm doing what I need in a spouse. And so I thought you were being unreasonable. Mm-hmm. I thought you were being demanding. And I thought, what was the other word I used?
Let me check my notes to see what other words I used to describe you.
Oh, and impossible to satisfy.
What do you want?
It's not that simple.
What do you want?
Well, and for me, like, I put a lot of years and effort into meeting you that way and understanding you, because for me that awareness of how drastically different we are came a lot sooner for me than it did for you. Yeah. And
you're a more aware person in general.
Yeah.
Like, I tend to be more aloof, which isn't a fit. And
so it was really you and our oldest daughter that was a catalyst of me being like, I'm trying to connect with you, but I can see that in some ways I'm not connecting. Because
our oldest daughter and I are so different from you.
Right.
And
you and our oldest daughter are so similar and so drastically different from me that I was like, wait, like, I'm trying to make an effort. I'm trying to connect. But like, whatever language they have, like, that's not the language I'm speaking.
Right.
And that really was the beginning of a lot of effort and study and self-learning. That's where our personalities course came from.
Yeah.
It was bringing together multiple, theories and ideas when it came to personalities, and then putting our own and my own perspective on it of how it intertwined.
Yeah.
And as a thinker, I was like, oh, here's the handbook I've been needing my entire life to understand people. And it was during that time in my late 20s that I honestly had the realization that not everybody relates to the world through logic and efficiency.
Yeah.
Like, that was just an internal assumption that I had walked around with for almost 30 years. And here's the thing for a thinker personality. If a thinker personality can, one, recognize that, and two, recognize that their way of relating to logic and efficiency isn't any better than any other personality type, it doesn't make them quote unquote right. Like, if the goal,
it just comes down to what you value.
Yeah, if the goal is efficiency, that makes them right. But wouldn't you know it, the goal for the majority of the world isn't efficiency. So it doesn't make you.
If the goal is connection or fun,
right,
then people are like,
then that makes the thinker wrong.
Yeah, which is hard for them to swallow. Yeah.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about the personalities is it's not about right and wrong. It's about different needs and loving and respecting another person enough to learn what their needs are and have a desire to meet them.
Yeah. Well, and so you were doing that. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't. And because I just kind of stupidly stuck to my script that I'd had for years before I met you of, I can't wait to be a husband and to do all the things that I saw my dad do. Because my mom was so happy. I can't wait to make a woman happy the way my dad did. And like, when you told me.
Well, and as a healer dreamer, doing that is fulfilling for you.
Yeah.
That would give you your worth.
It's a worth tie.
Yeah.
And as somebody who helps people professionally with that, to do that successfully, I might add. Like, I'm not saying this to defend myself. Like, I've helped a lot of people.
You've helped people?
I've helped a lot of people, but I was failing in my own home front. And and it went so against my paradigm. I'm like, I can't possibly be failing at my marriage because I'm Jonathan Decker. I can't. So it had to be you. And then like I finally like stubbornly pieced it together. I heard the message enough of, you don't know me, you don't see me, and it feels like you don't care enough to try. That sunk in of like, holy crap, that actually is her experience, and she's not off base. That is what's happening. And just because it's not what I intended to happen doesn't mean that's not what's going on. And you know, so that was my big deficiency, or one of my big deficiencies. And you talk about leading with anger, which is not something that you want to do or who you want to be. Mm-hmm. But the sad truth was, like, a lot of times in your life, that was the natural setting. And then you worked through that because you didn't want to be that way. But then you're like, but you found with me, that was what worked.
Right. I would try everything else and nothing else was working.
Yeah.
You know.
And so one, you need to be able to voice what your needs are. You need to know what your needs are.
Yeah. And
then you need to voice what your needs are. And your partner has to be willing to meet you there. And I sadly, like, I needed to be shooken loose, right? I needed that wake-up call, which is so sad because I always get frustrated with people, especially men in therapy, when it's like, what took you so long? And then I live that. So I have a lot more compassion for that dynamic now. But what's changed is, and what's changing, honestly, is you stopped checking for understanding.
Yeah. I had to give you the space to fall down instead of always being your safety net.
And that if you didn't check for understanding and I did something and it made things worse, or I didn't do what I committed to do, or there was a misunderstanding, that I needed to be the one to check. I needed to be the one to say, okay, this is what I'm hearing. Is that correct? Right. And that was frustrating and that was hard, especially for me. I think for you, it was less frustrating and hard than previously.
Yeah.
And I have been stepping into that, and I've been doing better on that. And honestly, it's still a work in progress. And I know you voicing your needs calmly and patiently, you've made huge strides in that, but that's also a work in progress.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And we're so familiar with the phrase that like hindsight is 20/20, right? And it's like there was so many skills that I was learning at the same time, like healthy conflict resolution, right?
Yeah.
And so learning to express my needs in a healthy way without becoming an attacker, right? Without getting aggressive, or without burying my needs and vilifying the anger and the frustration, right? Like being in that middle space of being an affirmer. So learning how to voice my needs in a healthy way. Well, like you were saying, like having the clarity of knowing what your own needs are, right?
Yeah.
Like that takes a decent amount of maturity just there, being like, this is what's important to me, this is what I value.
Yeah.
And then communicating that to your partner, your friend, your spouse in a healthy way without lashing out or without being passive aggressive. Like all of that, I'm like, just that journey, I'm like, I feel like it took me a solid 10 years of conscious effort, right? And so looking back, it's like, oh, I wish I could do those things differently, but at the same time, I wasn't equipped with the tools to do things differently. I'd never been taught any of those things. And how can you do something that you don't know, right?
So we pass it on to you. So you don't have to take 10 years for the process, or 10 years to even get started, right? Because you were kind of like on the tail end of your process when you were like, hey, I've done all this, I've been doing all this, and and so
and
you
it's
got,
not that I didn't need to put in as much effort as you did.
No, but you'd already done it.
Yeah.
And another thing, and I think this is my big takeaway, is that it's not about arguing who's right. One thing he doesn't mention in this comedy clip that his wife could have said is, you said, what time do you leave? Right? So I'm telling you what time we're leaving the house. That's equally valid. Like, she could argue that point.
But that's not funny.
But it's not funny. It doesn't work for the comedy bit. But but more true to our experience, they could argue over the phrasing and who's right. Or I didn't misunderstand you. Like, I often would say, like, I didn't misunderstand. You didn't phrase it clearly, right?
Yeah.
Or you would say, I phrased it just fine. Your understanding is wacko. Like, that doesn't matter. What matters is, okay, are we actively listening? Are we repeating back what we're hearing? Are we making sure we're on the same page? And that is how to clearly communicate. If you've enjoyed this Marriage Problems video, we've got a whole series. One of them is going to pop up right here over my face. If you'd like to learn more about personalities, and we cannot overemphasize just how clutch and crucial this has been in our relationship with each other and also with everyone in our lives, you can learn about that on our membership site. We've got a whole course dedicated to that, and you can start a trial for just $1. The link is below.
Wow.
So until next time.
Keep shining. We need your light.
No, I was telling you to say that.
I did.
See, this is what I'm talking about. This is exactly what we're talking about. No, that's good. That's a good way to end it.
Until next time.
Okay, keep shining.
We need your light.